For our last exhibit of the day, we have Jonathan Gonzalez again for his last presentation, last one of the day, with Raptor Events. So if you haven't been here in the earlier sessions, Jonathan is the owner of Raptor Events LLC. Raptor Events provides interactive and educational shows with amazing birds of prey and reptiles. Today, discussing biomimicry, where material structures and systems are modeled after biological entities and processes. He will focus on the unique and natural behaviors of these animals. Thank you so much for joining us again, Jonathan.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, I have a bird she's very excited, so just bear with us here because she knows she's going to fly very soon. This is Luna. She is our smartest bird. So she knows I have the food in the bag. That's why she jumped onto the bag. And we're going to have some fun flying her in a minute. I just want to give a few fun facts about her before we fly. Yeah, she's very excited. She is a Harris's hawk. These are really cool birds. I would put them up there with the smartest of the raptors. They hunt in packs. They call them the wolves of the sky because in their society, the females are in charge, but they will hunt in large groups. I think sometimes the families will even have 7 birds work together for hunting. The females will usually fly higher, signaling to males below. I know there's some background. We'll let the plane go by. Hey there, Luna. They will signal with either a tail wag or a vocalization, and she will probably vocalize with us here. She might make some noises with us. And that communication is really important for their hunting. A lot of times the female will expect a male to fly low and flush out rabbits and jackrabbits and things to eat. We are also going to see her agility. In a minute, I'm going to fly her and I'm going to send her up to the top of the roof and I'll toss a lure for her. It's actually half of a tennis ball for her to catch just to demonstrate how good her agility is. All of our raptors are able to see across a football field. Well, I mean, we can see across the football field, but to give you an idea of how good their eyesight is, if you had a newspaper, I know Luna, soon, across a football field, she would be able to read the fine print on that newspaper a football field away. Biomimicry, we discussed that through this whole event. Scientists and engineers, they actually studied falcons the most to design modern aircraft, but they looked at the wings of different birds to design different types of planes. So the nostril of a falcon is really unique. She's a hawk, so she doesn't have the same structure. But when a falcon is flying really, really fast, they mimicked the inside of their nasal structure to design modern jet engines. Hawks like her, let's see, will you show us your wings? Have more of a broad wing rather than a long wing. Like a falcon has long pointed wings for speed. A hawk has much more broad wings for soaring. So when you see those commercial jets, they have more of the broad wing shape. I know she is so excited, so I'm going to pick her up and get her set up for flight. Again, these are our smartest birds, so that's why she has very little patience for me because she's thinking about doing her routine and stuff like that. So her gripping power, she's very strong. If she was to... this morning, I did one grip test for myself. I got 102 pounds per square inch of crushing power myself. A small falcon can get 100 to 120, and a hawk like this can score 200 to 300 pounds per square inch. Just got to get her leash off here. Stay patient, Luna. Once this is a little tangled here. Good bird. A lot of dexterity in falconry. I got into this when I was in high school. I got my falconry license in 11th grade. I took my written test and all that stuff. Okay, there we go. Luna will be loose in 1 second. She has this tracker here. So if she decides to take off, I can still find her. And she knows it is time for flight. So I sent her down to one of her perches there. I'm going to put her leash down. She knows my signal. It's usually a whistle to go up. I know. Go up. She is kind of lazy, so she'll like to step higher and higher. I had a perch here, so she goes to the roof. All right. She knows what to expect. All right. And she carried it onto the roof there. She can catch that ball right out of the air. I'll give her another treat for doing that. Good job, Luna. We'll do it again. Yeah, in the wild, these birds can do a backflip when they're trying. I just have to let it go. Good bird. When they're trying to catch a bird out of the air or different things, they are really agile out there in the wild. All right, let's do it again. All right. Working with the backyard, a lot less space, but it's all right here. All right, she did not like that because I threw it way too low for her. Come on. All right, fun stuff. We will reset her with a treat on her stump. So a lot of times in the wild, these birds will catch food about 30% of the time. So they miss about 70%. That one was my fault, though. All right. You want it? All right. That one was her fault. Good bird, Luna. One more. Let's do it again. All right. She left it for me. Luna. Go up. All right. Got it? All right, there she goes, right to the stump. That was a great catch. Come on up here, good bird. Now I'll just fly her around the yard a little while we talk about some birds. Give her, right now she's eating mouse that has been cut up and prepared for today's routine. She's very smart. Like I said, she knows that all the food is in this bag. And we can really see her wings. I'll have her catch a piece right by the camera here. There we go. Let's see that a little bit. You want to go down? Oh, she had a little treat left. I can start taking some questions while we're doing this.
Hey, Jonathan, thanks so much again for the incredible presentation. You've just been going back to back all day. So really great, amazing job. I have a quick question for you. I know you were speaking earlier in the day that all these birds have trackers in case they get away and the relationship between you and these birds. So I guess I'm kind of curious watching them fly around the yard as you're showing them. Have you ever had any of them fly away? And if so, or, you know, what is that relationship in terms of how bonded you are to these birds, or if they more just see it as like food and, you know, the demonstration?
Yes, that's a great question. All of my birds have minds of their own, of course. And so sometimes we'll have a bird that really cares about being like friends with us. But a lot of times it's just like a partnership. They understand their life is easier and we ask them to do things that they generally like to do. I have had birds fly off. With the tracker, we put it on each time we're about to fly. And it's really easy for me to find them. If something happens where they get blown off course, windy days are really tough with birds because they can't, a nice gust of wind could blow a bird, you know, far away from me behind a line of trees perhaps. And so if I can't quite see the bird, it's really hard to find them by visually looking. So this new technology that they came out with of being able to track the birds with a cell phone is really cool. I had my falcon has flown off quite a few times, but that is usually not like malicious or he's not throwing a tantrum or anything. It's more curiosity. So I had to understand what he wanted to see and why he wanted to look at things. And so we take him places that he can soar really high and he likes to sit on high up buildings and watch. But I've had a few situations where I've had to track a falcon pretty far before. All right, we're going to do one more. She looks like she wants to catch her ball again. All right. Now right down to the stump. Great job, Luna. Do we have another question?
Great. Yeah, we do actually have a private question that came in asking about the average wingspan of these birds.
Well, that's a great question. Every bird is different. So our falcon, his wingspan is probably only about 2 feet, a couple feet. This bird, hers, it's hard to tell from here, but let's see. That's one wing there. I think hers might be about 3 feet across. Our Eurasian eagle owl, who we met this morning, his wingspan is about 4 feet. A female, and we'll talk about male, female in 1 second. I know we've gotten that question every time. Female Eurasian eagle owl could have a 6-foot wingspan. Your average bald eagle hits about 7-foot wingspans. And the biggest, I mean, it's not quite a bird of prey, but the Andean condor is a vulture, and their wingspan is about 10 feet. They are really, really big wingspans. And so that really helps with their soaring abilities and what they're up to. Male, female. So female birds of prey are larger than males. So I'm almost out of food for her, so I'm just going to let her kind of look around and think for a minute. Female birds of prey are larger than males because they need to protect the nest, as well as they don't have to compete for resources the same way. If they were the same size hunting the same prey, it could make it really difficult to feed your babies. All right, I can only do one more, Luna. And oh, now we see something kind of cool. There's a wild crow. In the wild, the crows do not like hawks. They are very territorial. The hawk, she lives here and stuff too, so she can handle her ground. But just so you know, if you see the crows dive bombing her, that's why. All right. And that is how quick they react too. She dropped it, but she went straight for him. All right, Luna, that was it as far as food goes. I'll take another question.
Sure, we have another question as well about the urban environment and having these birds in areas where there are like power lines and, the human impacts. Are there ever any fears of them flying onto those lines, given how powerful they are, other types of human impacts on them?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I have to be pretty careful. Most of the time, my birds know where they can safely land. I'm just going to get her set up here to go back on her perch. But yeah, there are tragedies where falconers will have their falcons fly and the falcon hits an uninsulated wire, transformers that maybe some wires are exposed, and they will lose birds to electrocution. It's a lot less common than it used to be, because I do remember last year at STEM, I talked to someone from SoCal Edison, and they have a whole program where they're trying to insulate wires to prevent raptor deaths all around the country. Not the country, the state here. And so other human impacts for these birds can be affected by a lot of things. Rat poison is a huge one that we can work on at home. If you don't poison rats, then you're not poisoning birds, as well as snakes and mountain lions. When a rat eats poison, it gets back into the environment and it doesn't just kill the rat. I'm all for humane pest control. So I recommend like zap traps or snap traps, something that will kill the rat really quickly, so then you're not harming any other wildlife. I did discuss in the last one, someone asked about human impact. The wind turbines are really, really great for renewable electricity, but birds can't see them very clearly. And a lot of those big windmills will kill a lot of raptors because they don't see the same way we do. They have very binocular vision. They can look really far away, and they don't see it coming when it hits them. This year, they did a study and they found a way to decrease raptor deaths by 70% by painting one of the windmill blades black while the other two were white. And so that was a really cool upgrade. And then that's a first step in a long list of steps for us to keep these birds safe.
Great, really interesting stuff, Jonathan. We have a couple of questions coming in about how many birds you have and that you take care of. I know we've seen about 4 today, but I'm sure you have more.
So let's see, 3, 4, 5. I have 6 birds at the moment. I have 3 falcons, 2 hawks, and an owl. And when we do shows, we typically bring 3 or 4. I wonder what you see. She can focus on things. She might have seen her own reflection in the laptop. We have 3 different falcons because we do a lot of work that also beyond shows. A lot of my birds are working birds for what we call nuisance bird abatement. And we'll fly a bird to scare away pest birds. It's a humane way, and those pest birds that are causing problems at an office building will leave the building because we make it look like a bird is in hunting mode. So yeah, there's Luna, and we fly Luna, and falcons are really good for that because they fly really far and high, and it makes it look really scary to not native actually, birds that we're trying to scare away. So we do that with a lot of starlings, which come from Europe. People do it with pigeons and sometimes seagulls on like hotel resorts and things like that.
Wow, that's really interesting. I never heard anything like that before. And I know that is definitely a common problem that people have. And so definitely a good thing to know. It looks like we have about a minute left. We have a lot of other questions for you. So I don't know if you plan to stick around a little bit longer.
You can give me a couple more.
Sure. Okay, great. So we have another one here. We had talked earlier about you know, tracking the birds and trying to recapture them if they ever got away. When you do track them, if they do get away, how do you recapture them?
Oh, that's a pretty good question. So most of the time, I don't have to do much besides our normal routine. There's a time this bird flew into a tree. She was being a little bit like a toddler, but I put a normal treat, and I also have to be careful because she's smart. I put a treat down on her stump, and usually she flies back in and knows the routine. I can pick her up, and we can go home. There was one time she knew every time she came back, she would get a treat, and so she'd fly off again. So I had to be careful because she was starting to wise up to that. With the falcon, they love their lure, and so I would swing a lure around in what we call classical conditioning. And so it is really fun for these birds. They really do enjoy hunting and chasing things. And I've had it where I had a lure that I forgot in a show. I flew the falcon, left the lure on the ground. This bird went straight after the lure because they just love to grab things like that. They love tennis balls. That's a fun game that they can play, is they can hold on to a tennis ball carefully and things like that, and it works their feet. Right, there you go. So yeah, a lot of times we don't have to do much to recapture them. They want to come back. It's just line of sight and things like that.
Great, perfect. Thank you so much again, and for offering a little bit of extra time. I know we have the closing ceremonies coming up in about 14 minutes. So if you want, I could ask you a couple more questions in the interim, or if you need to
you
head
can give
out.
me a couple more. I know
Sure.
a lot of those questions are really unique, so we can answer a few more of those, and you tell me when we're done.
Sure, yeah. So in terms of the weight of these birds, could you give us a little bit more information about like how big they are compared to
Oh,
each
did
other?
you say for weight?
Yes.
Yeah,
How heavy
so
they are.
they're a lot lighter than we expect. So this bird, I survey crowds. I'm like, how much do you think this bird weighs? People will say 5 pounds. People will say 7 pounds. She actually weighs between 1 and 2 pounds. Let's see, her weight was like 900 grams, so that's about 2 pounds. And they have a lot of feathers. Let's see, you can see a lot of the fluff here. And they need those feathers for flight, and they need those feathers to stay warm. But yeah, the feathers are really lightweight. If you took every feather off of her, of course, we'd never do that, and weighed all of those feathers, and you weighed all of her bones, the feathers actually weigh more than the bones because those bones are hollow. Really, really important for flight. Birds also don't sweat. She's not doing it now, but if she were hot, she would open her beak and breathe out. It's called gular breathing. And because sweat glands also add weight to an animal, so birds don't have sweat glands, and so they just breathe out their hot air.
Great, perfect. Thank you so much for your answer on that one. I know earlier you were talking about the crows flying around and the impact. Could you explain a little bit more if in terms of the food chain, who would be more intimidating to who between the crow and your bird?
That's a great question. So people will use raptors to scare away crows, and they will use Harris hawks like her. When she's on her own and she's just kind of hanging out, the crows will often, mob her a little bit, squawk at her. But if she decided, and I've seen her chase crows before, they will get out of here right away. So people that have a big crow problem, I know there's certain neighborhoods that will hire falconers to scare the crows away. And they will use bigger birds like a big hawk, really large falcons to scare those crows away. Food chain wise, they don't hunt crows very much. I'm sure in a really, like if they were starving and they got a hold of one, they would eat it. But I don't think they prefer the meat. I've heard it's pretty bitter as far as most hawks don't like to eat crow. And yeah, I hope that answers that question. It's mostly just a territorial thing. You'll always see off the freeway, if you see a mob of crows, look around, you'll probably see a red-tailed hawk somewhere nearby.
Gotcha. Yeah, thanks for your answer on that one. And then I think the last one before we'll go to a 10-minute break before the closing ceremonies. We have a lot of students that I'm sure are very interested in what you're doing right now. Can you explain a little bit how you started to train birds and your pathway to getting into that?
Yeah, I was first a volunteer at the LA Zoo. That's where I learned about birds. I also learned what a falconer was and that I could actually obtain a falconry license. So I met other falconers at the zoo when I was a volunteer in high school. But a falconry license is where you can actually obtain a bird, legally, and go hunting with it. So it is a real hobby. that's really, really fun and unique. It takes a lot of work to get into. So it's not like stamp collecting that you just, start gathering some random things. It's a big investment. It's pretty expensive startup costs. This glove is probably about $50 just for the glove. It's good to have a few gloves. The equipment, I learned how to make a lot of my own falconry equipment. Feeding the birds, you got to have a freezer full of dead meat. If your family does not want you to have a freezer full of dead rats and quail, you need your own freezer for that. So things like that. There's a bit of a barrier to entry for that stuff. But then I got my first red-tailed hawk in 11th grade in high school. I hunted with that red tail and I released him back into the wild. It was really, really cool and unique to be part of that hunting process with the bird. And then I started this business a few years ago officially, and we started doing shows. We gathered falcons, the hawks, and the owl to do the education with people. To me, it's really important to just spread the word on what we can do to help them. I would really like them to still be around during my whole lifetime and for future generations.
Great. Thank you so much again, Jonathan. Like I've said throughout this entire, different presentations that you've done throughout the day, this is an incredible privilege for us all to be able to see your birds and learn more about what they do during COVID. A lot of us aren't able to go out and really interact with these species in any type of capacity. And so thank you so much again for your time with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, of course.